I'm Vincent Balistreo for the International Business Times, and this is the Huawei Aspire P7. Now, you may not have heard of this Chinese company, but they're planning on using this to take over a big share of the Android market space. The question is, can they do it?
It's a good-looking phone. Its looks are derived from other attractive devices. There's a bit of Sony Xperia in the side profiles, HTC One in the hideaway slots, and even iPhone in the lightness aesthetic that Huawei is pushing. The quality of materials is solid too. The P7 is rigid and tightly gapped, with a light plastic skeleton. It's really light actually, and the weight's proportioned so evenly that it kind of feels like you're not holding anything. I can't deny how impressive this design is, especially for a relatively unknown company in the US like Huawei. What really struck me about the P7 is the user interface. Huawei dubbed their Android skin Emotion. The name is hokey, but whatever. It's eerily familiar if you've used an iPhone, but unlike Apple, Huawei encourages you to customize their phone. There's a handful of themes built into the phone, and it's really nice to see this behavior from a phone manufacturer. When you start playing around with the themes and settings, you'll notice how nice the P7 screen is. The colors are a smidge more saturated than other displays, but I quite like that. The display is sharp too. The pixel density is 441 ppi, which is actually even better than the Galaxy S5. Now the cameras are intriguing too, especially the front-mounted one. It's an 8 megapixel lens. The next best is a 5 megapixel unit on the HTC One. Now what Huawei's doing here is jumping ahead of the big players to establish the P7 as the premier phone for selfies. Well, people do love taking pictures of themselves, even if I don't, so that's a smart selling point. The rear lens is a fairly standard 13 megapixel, offering good outdoor photographs but lacking the sharpness of other high-end phones. And man, even though the P7 only packs a single speaker, it makes a serious amount of noise. Now, although the P7 takes cues from some of the best phones on the market, it's by no means without fault. Remember when I said the Emotion UI reminds me of iOS? Well, it's got the same dumb, can't remove icons without deleting the program thing going on. And guess what? There's a whole host of programs that you can't delete, so you're stuck looking at them, or shuffling them off to a side page in a folder marked Unwanted. This also means that there's no traditional app drawer since Huawei's ditched it in favor of the Apple approach. Worse yet, the Emotion UI is still pretty young for an interface, and it's not well optimized. It takes up a huge chunk of the phone's 2 gigs of RAM, causing some lag during normal use. You only get 16 gigs of storage on the P7, well, 11 usable gigs really, so you will need an SD card eventually. And the Ascend P7 is never subsidized through a contract in the US, so you'll have to buy it unlocked or outright, meaning you'll have no choice but to bear the financial hit up front, and the P7 will cost you about $450. Well, it says Huawei on the front. If you're into the cool brand thing, this isn't gonna do it for you.
Now, on its own, the Aspire P7 is a pretty good phone. But when you realize that Huawei is behind pretty much all of development and how far this Chinese company has come in the past few years, you have to wonder, how many of us are going to have Chinese phones in our pockets soon?